Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Crystal and welcome to my channel. If you don't already know, I recently started a true crime series on my channel and I'm uploading a true crime video every Wednesday. So welcome back if you guys aren't new here, and happy Wednesday to you all. So with that being said, let's just go ahead and jump right into today's case, which is an extremely sad one. So as you guys can see by the title, today's case is going to be about 8-year-old Relisha Rudd, who actually disappeared and went missing from the state of Washington, D.C. So Relisha Rudd was a young girl born on October 29th, 2005 in Washington, D.C. She is described by most people to be a playful young kid with a huge and bright personality. She was also known for being really smart and really loving school. Some of her teachers said that she was one of their most favorite students and was always a pleasure to have in class. They also stated that Relisha loved a challenge, and she also loved to come before school to help out. She loved to stay after school to help out. So Relisha was really a teacher's favorite. Relisha was also a cheerleader and participated in numerous after-school activities. Relisha had dreams of becoming a model and even a singer one day, but unfortunately, she had a really hard home life and she was caught up in a terrible cycle of generational abuse and systematic poverty. So Relisha's mom, in fact, whose name is Shamika, she actually entered the foster care system when she was a child herself, growing up with a very rough life. She had Relisha when she was about 19 years old, and prior to Shamika having Relisha's father was convicted and charged of manslaughter in 1992 for the death of his 17-month-old daughter. So prior to Relisha even being born, her father had been convicted and charged for murdering his own child. For this, he was sentenced for 15 years and was released in 2002 and had Relisha with her mother in 2005. So Relisha's parents also had another child together that was actually older than Relisha. Relisha's older brother also experienced unstable living situation, and Relisha also had 2 other siblings from her mother's side. So in total, Relisha had 3 brothers. And unfortunately, they all lived a rough life together, from being evicted, going from home to home, sleeping on their couch, and even having to go to homeless shelters in unsafe areas. Also, just something I want you guys to know and keep in mind is that the Child Protective Services Bureau in Washington, D.C. has always had an open case for Relisha. They've always kept an eye on her since Relisha was actually 2 years old, because she had a lot of bruising on her body that were unexplained, and her parents couldn't explain why she had so much bruising on her at the age of 2. And it's really unfortunate that in a lot of cases we see this often, but Relisha's case actually slipped through the cracks, and at some point Child Protective Services stopped following up and stopped doing in-home visits and checking in on Relisha. So struggling and going through that from basically birth to age 8 years old, we're now in 2013 and Relisha has already lived a hard life, but unfortunately her mother and her 3 brothers all had to move to a homeless shelter, an unsafe area, and this shelter was actually called the DC Family Shelter. It was known to be the largest shelter in the district, housing hundreds of families and up to 600 kids at one time. It's across the street from a morgue and a meth clinic, so that right there should just tell you how unsafe of an environment the shelter was in. With that being said, there was also a lot of allegations coming out of this shelter, mainly due to drug deals being done in the shelter, in front of the shelter. The shelter also had a lot of claims of sexual assaults happening as well. So I also want you guys to note that the shelter did have 2 main rules according to the shelter that they had in place. The first main rule was that they did a nightly room check. So this meant that each night they would go to each room to make sure that everyone was in the room that they were supposed to be, and to do a head count so that they knew how many people were in fact in each room. So that was one of the rules that you guys should just keep in mind. And the second rule that the shelter had in place, that if you were an employee of the shelter, you could not have a relationship or speak to on a personal level anyone that was staying in the shelter. So if you worked for the shelter in any manner, they didn't want you to develop any type of friendship, relationship, whether that be romantic or not. They didn't want any types of relationships developing from the people staying at the shelter and the employees of the shelter. I'm sure they had their reasons for why this was such a strict rule, but this was actually, in fact, such a strict rule. They stated that if you were an employee and you were to get caught having a relationship with someone staying in the shelter, that you were to be terminated immediately. So those are the two main rules that the shelter did have in place. So now I'm touching a little bit on Relisha's childhood and a little bit of background as to what was going on at the time of her disappearance. So Relisha's teachers and her cheerleading coach started to notice that she would come to school in the same clothes daily, that her clothes were dirty, her hair wasn't done. They could just tell that Relisha was not being taken care of. They also noticed that when school was over, Relisha never wanted to go home. It was to the point where everyone knew that Relisha's home life wasn't great and there was a complete lack of care. She wanted to come to school early. She wanted to stay after school. She just never wanted to be home. And teachers and her cheerleading coach really started to recognize this. So her cheerleading coach, in fact, actually kept an eye out for Relisha, keeping her under her wing. She, in fact, would help Relisha bathe once she got to school. She would help Relisha do her hair. She would buy her clothes sometimes and things of that nature. She really started to step in as a second mother figure to really try to help Relisha out. So another thing employees noticed was that Relisha and her brother were left at the school for extended amount of hours. I'm not saying just, oh, an hour went by, time lapsed, the mother forgot to pick them up. No, they would be at school for hours and hours upon hours, to the point where everyone was going home. The janitor was leaving, teachers were leaving, everyone was gone, and they would still notice that Relisha and her brother were still at school and hadn't been picked up. So because of all the signs, they were clearly there. The employees at the schools really started to notice, what was going on with Relisha and her brother. They basically noted that Relisha and her brother were clearly being neglected and abused. And I say abused because her brother actually came to school with bruises, and the bruises were unexplained. He refused to tell the teacher where he got the bruises from or how the bruises got on his body. So I think the administration at this point basically drew the conclusion that they were being neglected and abused, which they clearly, in fact, were. Due to this, the employees and the administration of the school obviously have a duty of care, so they went ahead and let police officers know. The police did open an investigation, but no charges were filed against Shamika, which is Relisha's mother. Relisha didn't want to be home, in fact, so much as that she joined and participated in the Homeless Children's Playtime project, which they still exist to this day. It's basically somewhere that you can go if you're a child and you're homeless and you don't want to go home. It's kind of like, I guess I would say, the Boys and Girls Club, kind of just somewhere where kids can do activities. They had scheduled playtime there. They learned there. They, did plays. They sang and danced and did everything a child loves to do. So this was more so a safe space for children. That's pretty much Relisha's life up until she disappeared. But as you guys can tell, she had a really, really rough upbringing. She didn't really have a mother who probably didn't even have the means to care for her in the way that Relisha and her siblings needed to be cared for. Relisha often would stay at her aunt's house. Her aunt's name is Ashley. Aunt Ashley said that she started to see Relisha less and less, but she did stay at her house from time to time. But one day when Relisha was at her Aunt Ashley's house, Ashley said that she got a call from a man that said he was on his way to pick up Relisha. And Ashley said that she had no idea who this man was and that she had never seen him before. But he knew her name, he knew her phone number, and he knew her address. So hearing this, she immediately called Shamika, which is Relisha's mother, and she said, hey, a man just called me. I don't know who he is. He knows my name, my number, my address, and he's telling me that he's on his way to come pick up Relisha. Shamika then told her, yeah, that's fine. Go ahead, let her go with him. His name is Khalil Tatum, and he is Relisha's godfather. So this is the first time Ashley is hearing of this man. She doesn't know what she looks like. She's never seen him before, but she just assumes, okay, you're her mother. I'm assuming you have her best interest. I'm assuming you know who this man is. So Ashley did what Shamika told her to do. When the man came to her house to pick up Relisha, she sure enough went ahead and let Relisha go with this man. So after this, Shamika's mom and her sister, Ashley, were definitely suspect about this guy at first, which, I mean, who wouldn't be? A strange man that, your sister and your daughter had never told you about is coming to pick up your granddaughter and your niece, and I'd feel strange the way that they did. But over time, Khalil actually started to gain the family's trust. As time went on, he went to buy Relisha items, clothes. He took her on dates, started buying Relisha gifts. He bought her an iPad. He even took her to a Disney on Ice, which if you guys have been, I'm pretty sure you guys know those are a pretty penny. Those tickets to Disney on Ice aren't cheap. So I say all this to say he started spending a lot of time and a lot of money on this young 8-year-old little girl who, I mean, not trying to be rude, but like, she's not his family. Like, there has to be, in my head, just thinking about this story, I was thinking there has to be some type of ulterior motive here. Like, why else would he be lathering this young girl with gifts? Don't forget that Relisha had 3 other brothers. So if he was this great and wonderful godfather, why wasn't he this way to Relisha's brother? If he was buying her gifts, why wasn't he buying all of them gifts? I was going over this story and doing research. A lot just didn't make sense to me. So yeah, in the back of my mind, I just was like, how did no one else in Relisha's family find it weird? Like, find this stranger odd? I guess her Aunt Ashley and her grandmother found it odd as well, but maybe they just were thinking, okay, well, if Shamika, trusts this guy, then we have no other option but to trust him. Maybe she knows, something we don't know. So I can get how they also decided just to stay out of it, because at the end of the day, Relisha is not their child. She is Shamika's child. So I can understand that point of view as well. Once Relisha started to spend a lot of time with her godfather, Khalil, people started noticing that Relisha was started to miss a lot of school, to the point where the school actually reached out to Shamika and scheduled a meeting with her because they wanted her to explain, Relisha's absences. She wasn't responding to their phone call. So they were like, you know what? We have to meet with you, like protocol, I'm assuming. So at the meeting, Shamika brought a note from someone named Dr. Tatum, supposedly treating Relisha for a neurological condition. So, of course, the administration thought this was extremely weird, because if Relisha's 8 years old and she's going to school, don't you think a neurological condition would be something of grave importance that the administration and her teacher, someone who sees her every day for 8 hours, should know about? So, of course, the administration grew strange. They grew weary. They were like, you know what? Red flag. Let's pause. Something is really suspicious about this. So sure enough, a few days later, on March 10th, the school called Dr. Tatum and stated that he was treating Relisha for a neurological condition and that they're going to be wrapping up and she should be at school by the end of the week. He also stated on this phone call that he was going to provide some type of documentation at the, of course, administration's request, stating that, if she really is out being treated by this condition, we need hardcore proof. We need to know what type of doctor you are. We need your, your full name. Right now, they just know Dr. Tatum. We need to know where you work, what institute, things of that nature. And, on the phone, Dr. Tatum's like, yeah, sure. Once we get off the call, I'll go ahead and provide you guys that information. Sure enough, they get off the phone call. Dr. Tatum never sends them the information. So, of course, the administration started to really grow weary, thinking that something was really up, odd, and sketchy about this. So they waited a few more days. Dr. Tatum over the phone did state that they were going to be wrapping up and that Relisha was going to be able to go back to school by the end of the week. So they waited a few more days, and sure enough, it got to the point where Relisha missed 10 school days. So the school at this point had a duty of care to report this due to the educational neglect that Relisha was being given. Not taking her to school is neglecting her of her right, which is to have an education. So once this was reported to authorities and authorities went ahead and put it into the hands of CPS, there then was a social worker whose job was to go out and lay eyes on Relisha, make sure Relisha's okay, make sure that things are good, that, she's really with this Dr. Tatum. And once the social worker was assigned to Relisha's case, they then went to the homeless shelter to, like I said, check on things, get an eye on Relisha. Social worker got there. Obviously, Relisha wasn't there. She's asking Shamika, where is Relisha? We need to lay eyes on her. Like, we were sent here by, the police department. And so, Shamika just gives the social worker a runaround. Oh, she'll be back. Oh, she's doing this, doing that. The social worker pretty much already knew something was up. So she started to ask around the homeless shelter. She started to ask, do you guys know of a Dr. Tatum? Does anyone know who a Dr. Tatum could be? And someone at the homeless shelter actually told her, yeah, the only Tatum I know is Khalil Tatum, and he's the 51-year-old janitor here at the shelter. So it was clear at this point that Dr. Tatum, supposedly the person who Shamika claimed to be Relisha's godfather, was a custodian worker at the homeless shelter. So once the social worker found this out, they then went back to the police and reported it to them. After this, the police actually brought Shamika in person to speak about the whereabouts of her young 8-year-old daughter, who is clearly missing, and she doesn't even seem like she cares right now. So once in the police station, Shamika stated that Tatum told her that Relisha was getting treated for a neurological condition. And it's really sad, but her mother really either she really believed this or she's just saying that she believed this. Either or, the cops were convinced, okay, something's super up. Nothing's adding up right now. The math is not mathing. And then Shamika also proceeded to say that on March 17th, spoke to Relisha on the phone. And this was the only time or the first time in 3 weeks she had spoken to her daughter. So you mean to tell me you hand your daughter over to the child's godfather, who you're also telling school administration and authorities that he's also supposedly a Dr. Tatum? Back up for a minute. If you know this man is a custodian worker at a homeless shelter, why are you sitting here trying to convince everyone else that he's a doctor and he's treating Relisha for a head condition? Either she's not the smartest person ever, or she's trying to play other people, making them seem like they aren't the smartest person ever. I don't know what her deal was. It's just crazy. So you mean to tell me that Shamika went this long without seeing her daughter and thought, no problem, she's just getting treated for a neurological condition? Please. Anyways, like any sane person, police thought this was weird, so they officially launched a missing persons report on Relisha. Just a missing persons report. So once the police did this, they then went to the family members, such as her Aunt Ashley and her grandmother, to just ask them, hey, do you guys know where Relisha is? When's the last time you guys have seen Relisha? And it was interesting because the stories weren't adding up. The grandmother would say, oh yeah, she was with Khalil Tatum, which is her godfather. The aunt was saying, yeah, I saw her on this day. And then the mom would flip it to other people. It just started to get really crazy. It seemed like all the adults in her family were blaming the other adults about where this 8-year-old young girl is. So the police caught on to this really quick. They're no one's stories are matching. We need to dig deeper, which as they should. So once authorities started really hearing about this Khalil Tatum name, they finally decided to look him up. And sure enough, they found out that he had been arrested and charged multiple times. He had a criminal record, and he also spent some time in prison. After doing some more investigation and research into who Khalil truly was, they found out that at the homeless shelter that he was a custodian at, Relisha and her family also stayed at, a lot of young girls there stated that He got really close to them, and a lot of young girls and teenagers, in fact, started calling Khalil Godfather around the shelter. If you guys remember what I said earlier, that the shelter had two policies. Sure enough, neither of these policies were practiced. Like, they had no good reporting policy. They said that every night they were supposed to go to each room, make sure everybody was in their room, it was in their correct room that they were supposed to be in, that they knew the exact number of people that were in each room each night. This did not happen. Sure enough, Relisha was supposedly, we don't know if she was accounted for or not, but she wasn't in her room for 3 weeks, and some reports state that she was accounted for, some reports state that she doesn't, but I'm sure they did a lazy job. I'm sure if they did walk around, they didn't, count each. And you guys have to remember, at one point in time, there's at least 600 children staying at this homeless shelter. So now the police are trying to backtrack and figure out where this man, Khalil Tatum, is and where Relisha could possibly be. So on February 26th, they actually found surveillance footage of Relisha with Khalil walking in a hallway at a Holiday Inn Express. So then a few days later, on March 1st, according to Ashley, which is Relisha's aunt, she stated that she saw Relisha, and this is the last sighting of Relisha from her family. She stated that Relisha came over, she did Relisha's hair, she played with Aunt Ashley's children, which were Relisha's cousins. That was that. So on this same day, we're assuming later on that day, which is March 1st, Relisha is actually seen again on surveillance camera footage with Khalil, but this time they're at a Days Inn. The first time they were at a Holiday Express, this time they're at a Days Inn hotel. So that was March 1st. So now here we are the following day on March 2nd. Khalil is now seen on surveillance footage, but this time he's at a hardware store, and you guys will not believe the items that he was caught purchasing. Khalil was caught purchasing a shovel, like those large gallon trash bags, and a bag of lime. So I actually had to look this up myself because I didn't understand what the big deal was about buying a bag of lime, but it's actually something known to use to cover up the smell of human remains. So if those items aren't obvious to you guys, then at this point, I don't know what is. So he was seen the following day buying these items on surveillance camera. Here is where it gets a little, I guess, confusing. So just follow me here, guys. So a few days later, after purchasing those items, Khalil is then seen again walking into a hotel room with his wife. His wife's name was Andrea Kelly Tatum. So after being seen walking into this room with his wife and then walking out of the room later on that night by himself, unfortunately, the next morning, her body was discovered in that hotel room, lying on the bed with a single gunshot wound to the head. So when officers went to the scene and noticed that this was the wife of Khalil Tatum, on March 20th, they officially issued an Amber Alert for Relisha and a BOLO for Khalil. So if you guys don't know what a BOLO means, it just is a be on the lookout notice. On March 20th, they finally released an Amber Alert for Relisha. I'm just going to put that out there, Amber Alert. So they launched a missing persons investigation into her, but this is the first time that actually issue an Amber Alert when they find the man's wife dead in a hotel room. I think it probably got serious to them at that point. This man may be dangerous. I'm not really sure what the officers were thinking in this situation, but nonetheless, an Amber Alert was eventually issued for Relisha. So the following day, after the Amber Alert and the BOLO were issued on March 21st, Khalil Tatum was charged with the murder of his wife, Andrea Tatum. After this, they began to search Khalil's home and his vehicle. Searched his home and they found 2 cell phones, 2 passports, a photo of Relisha, and some children's clothing and shoes. Besides this, they didn't find any evidence of a violent struggle, an attack, or even blood in his home nor in his vehicle. So about a week later, on March 31st, they found the body of Khalil Tatum in a shed with a single gunshot wound to his head.
Again tonight with new developments in the search for 8-year-old Relisha Rudd.
Yeah, police in Washington say they found a body tonight in a park where they have been searching for this little girl, but it's not her.
ABC 2 News' Christian Schaefer live in the newsroom with the update tonight. Chris?
Yeah, Jamie Kelly, that body found tonight in the park has been identified tentatively, according to D.C. police, as Khalil Tatum, the man suspected of killing his wife and kidnapping Relisha Rudd. But Rudd is still missing tonight. After weeks of searching, a discovery in Kenilworth Park and Aquatic Gardens in Northeast Washington, all indications are that it is the body of 51-year-old Khalil Tatum, and police say it appears that he committed suicide.
We have not confirmed what the cause of death is, although we will say that it looks like it likely is a suicide.
But it is a discovery that gets police no closer to finding 8-year-old Relisha Rudd, who disappeared from the homeless shelter where she had been living and where Tatum worked as a janitor.
So once they discovered Khalil Tatum's body and they realized he had actually committed suicide, so that gunshot wound was self-inflicted, they looked at the gun, they noticed that that was the same gun used to kill his wife, Andrea Tatum. Also, once they found his body, like I said, it was in a shed. There was a lot of like a foresty area, a pond, trees, and things of that nature, like just around. So authorities immediately assumed, okay, so he probably did something very terrible to Relisha, dumped her body somewhere over here, went to the shed, and shot himself from. So authorities are thinking now to search the surrounding areas, to search the pond, and to search around for Relisha's body. So now that they have found Khalil's body and they are searching for Relisha, this has now switched from a missing person investigation to a discovery mission. Her family had hopes and still has hope that Relisha is still alive somewhere out there, but authorities from just surveillance footage from Khalil killing his wife in the hotel room, shooting himself in the shed, they are now thinking that Relisha is probably not with us any longer. The media interviewed the father of Relisha's other 2 brothers, as well as Relisha's aunt, I believe, but they were unable to track down Shamika for any commentary on where she might think her daughter would be. She never talked to the media, not once, which to me was also strange because if my child is missing, I am talking to every single media outlet there is. So in the media, when discussing Shamika, they also stated that Shamika was diagnosed with a mild mental disability disorder and that she had been suffering from this her entire life as well. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that as well. So here's when a lot of theories come into play. There are a lot of people out there that believe that Khalil actually ended Relisha's life from all of the items that he purchased at the hardware store, the big bags, the shovel, and her body just hasn't turned up or it just has not been found yet. But there's also a lot of people who believe that Khalil actually sold Relisha into human trafficking. People believe this because Khalil actually posted some images on his social media of a lot of large, like $50 and $100 bills onto his social media page. I guess people were saying that Khalil never really posted money like that. He probably never really even had money like that. And so people believe that he may have gotten this money in return from selling Relisha into human trafficking. A lot of people don't know, but 40% of minors that are trafficked in the United States of America are actually African American. So I found this thought to be, really interesting. So there is a huge possibility that Relisha could have been trafficked. Like I said, her body and her whereabouts still to this day are unknown. So kind of just to add on to the theories, I don't want to get too deep in it, but a lot of people say that this is why Khalil probably killed his wife, Andrea, either because she found something out or she knew too much, or she was even probably going to go to authorities and she knew what Khalil had did to young Relisha. Another thing that I found was super interesting when I was looking up this case was that the family went on the Steve Wilkos show, which I'll include a little bit of footage here if I can locate it. But basically on this show, family members took a lie detector test to attest to if they knew or didn't know anything in regards to the whereabouts or the disappearance of Relisha Rudd.
Come Antonio, you came here, you took a lie detector test.
Steve, can I say something for you?
Sure.
Results? I heard you back there. You
I don't
said
care what you heard.
you said I'm here because of you. I called this show.
You are here because of me, because they already told me that I have to authorize it because it's my daughter. Now listen to that.
Listen. I ain't trying to hear none of that.
Can you go on with them results? Because I came here for you to prove to me.
No, I'm not proving that to you.
That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here.
You came here, took a lie detector test, and we asked you, did you participate in any way in the disappearance of Relisha? You answered no. Have you ever had any sexual physical contact with Relisha? You answered no. Did you ever strike any of your children, leaving marks or bruises? You answered no. The results came back the same to each and every question, and they came back that Antonio told the truth.
You're gonna be in jail.
No, I'm not.
You're gonna be in jail.
I'm getting two back. You just getting two.
Melissa, you took a lie detector test, and we asked you, did you participate in any way in the disappearance of your granddaughter? You answered no. Did you give your granddaughter to Khalil Tatum around the time of her disappearance? You answered no, and the results came back that you, Melissa, told the truth.
I ain't gotta take no test.
No. Hold on. She's right. She doesn't have to take a test.
I'm going
I
to
ain't
get
no
my
lie.
kids
Yeah,
back.
hold on.
I know, but I ain't do nothing.
You know
But
what? She's right. Please stop. You don't have to take a test, but you're not eliminating yourself as a suspect in the disappearance of your daughter.
Let me tell you something. I talk to the police day to day, and they don't never discuss me. They discuss other people.
I was the police, and I investigated murders, crimes against children, and I'll tell you right now, you would be number one on my list of people I'd be looking at. You, number one.
I was number one when they looked at me. I got eliminated. You can't down them. You can't down them. You can't down them. You cannot down them. I was number one first. You can't down them.
Yeah.
You can't down them.
But you ain't cleared either, and you still got a good chance of going to jail.
No.
There you go.
I'm glad you think so.
Yes, you do. Oh, yeah. You going to jail, and I'm getting my boys back.
Someday, hopefully that little girl is found.
Oh, she will
And
be.
when she's found, then hopefully you'll go away.
No.
You, I believe, have something to do with her disappearance.
Okay.
The fact
That's
that you
what
don't
you
believe
believe.
the janitor didn't have anything to do.
Everybody got their own
Everybody
options,
wants to
and
stick
there's
up
other people
in
out here
and
that
it makes
said
me
it ain't got nothing to
think
do
you
with
had
it,
an
too.
inappropriate relationship with that man.
I did.
And you're lucky.
I'm lucky what?
You're saying you don't believe that he killed himself?
I don't. You can't shoot yourself two
That's
times
right.
in the head.
Maybe somebody else did it for him, huh?
Okay, so who did it? I ain't no murderer.
You ain't no murderer, huh?
Nope, my prince ain't on nothing.
You ain't no murderer, you say. And you know what? You're no good mother either. Get the off my stage.
On this show, the family members that did take the test were found out to be telling the truth, but it was interesting because Shamika refused to take the test, which to me was sketchy a little bit in my eyes. This wasn't sketchy to some people because they know that these lie detector tests do not hold up in the eyes of the law. You know, in the court of the law, lie detector tests aren't 100%. They have not shown to be 100% truthful. So some people think that it wasn't a huge deal that Shamika refused to take this lie detector test. Unfortunately, to this day, Relisha still has not been found, nor has her body been located. Relisha was not only failed by her parents to me, but she was failed by the government agencies that were set in place for things like this not to happen. Also, I do think the staff members failed her as well, because if they knew that, you know, this man, Khalil, was being creepy or just being like weird to the younger girls that were staying at the homeless shelter, then why not say something? Why not report it? Like, I just feel like she crossed paths with so many adults in this story, and each and every one of them failed Relisha. So I also think that the police failed Relisha as well, because I just don't understand why it took so long for an Amber Alert to get put out. The moment she is not in an adult sight, there should be an Amber Alert out on her. The moment she isn't with a parent, the moment she's unaccounted for, there should have been an Amber Alert out, period. So as I was doing my research and I discovered, that they waited so long to put an Amber Alert out, it reminded me of the case I did a couple of weeks ago about Selena Mays, which was the 12-year-old young girl who went missing, who was actually pregnant. And same in that case, they waited almost a month to get the Amber Alert out. And I just don't understand. And again, I don't want to loop this in here, but I mean, these are both young African American girls who have gone missing in the US, and still to this day, neither of their bodies have been found. Like, it's just honestly extremely sad to me. And it's truly heartbreaking that, Relisha was failed by so many people. So there's actually a quote by Henderson Long of the DC's Missing Voices. He stated that between March 1st and March 18th, no Amber Alert was sounded for Relisha Rudd. No national alert went out for her. He also continued to state with the WUSA, noting that it was a long time for a child to be unaccounted for. So just some other information, I did want to let you guys know that the shelter was intended to close down in 2018, and in place of that shelter, they were meant to open smaller shelters, which I think would have been a great idea, because that's just such a huge shelter to keep accounted for all your employees, all of the young children that are staying there, just to keep an eye on everything. I feel like it was just extremely too large, which is probably why it started to grow infestation. People were getting unaccounted for, and it just wasn't going well. So actually, the shelter ended up closing down in 2019. But unfortunately, the 6 smaller shelters did not come up in its place. So I don't know where the people are staying that were in that shelter. It's really unfortunate. So I have another quote here by someone who actually went missing. Her name is Monique Person. She was abducted as a child and discovered 25 years ago that she had been given a fake identity. And I quote, "Since 1996, I've taken all of my time invested into trying to find myself, but over the years, I'm discovering there are so many more cases." Person also told WUSA there's a population of missing children that no one's thinking of. Person has urged authorities to continue investigating what happened to Relisha Rudd despite so many years passing by. She stated, "I'm standing here alive today to tell people to have hope. Don't stop looking, to never give up looking for us." She stated, "Because we're here." Law enforcement officials have offered a $50,000 reward for anyone who has any information on the case. If you know anything about Relisha Rudd's disappearance or her whereabouts, you are urged to call 202-727-9099. Like I said earlier, I think that this is just such a tragic case. I feel like so many people in Relisha's life failed her. It's also so unfortunate that this keeps happening to, young African American women in the United States, that it just takes so long for an Amber Alert to go out. It's just super sad and tragic of what happened to young, beautiful Relisha Rudd. But I am curious to know you guys' thoughts. I'm really curious to know what theories you guys have. I didn't want to dive too deep into the theories because honestly, at this point, the theories can be endless. We do know that her abductor did commit suicide and kill his wife as well. So in regards to this case, that's pretty much all we know. So let me know you guys' thoughts down below. Let me know you guys' theories. If you guys have any more additional information, or if you guys think I missed some information, please let me know down below in the comments. It's going to wrap up the disappearance of Relisha Rudd. I hope you guys were educated on her case, and go out there and spread her disappearance to everyone you know and just make people aware of it. Like I said, this true crime series is new to my channel, so I hope you guys are enjoying it and learning something. So I will see you guys next Wednesday for another true crime video. Stay safe out there.